The story begins with a declaration of intent, a vow echoing through the morning air as a young man commits himself to the capture of a target. This figure, operating under the code name Separator, prepares for the day. The scene shifts to a bedroom filled with the paraphernalia of obsession. Posters and merchandise clutter the space, highlighting a group of heroines known as the White Sky Guardians. This world belongs to the popular manga, Wataryum, or The Dream I Saw, a narrative centered on the protagonist Hinata and her battle against a malevolent organization in a society where supernatural powers have manifested. Ibuki stands before his mirror, adjusting his collar, fully aware of the reality he inhabits. He is not merely a resident but a reincarnated soul, an otaku from a previous life who now occupies the body of a background character in his favorite story. He scrutinizes his reflection, acknowledging the absurdity of his existence, a fan living within the canon, hiding the fact that he possesses knowledge of this world's mechanics that no one else holds. He resolves to play his part, stepping out of his humble dwelling just as the neighbor's door opens. Right on cue, Hinata emerges from the adjacent house. Ibuki feigns surprise, stammering slightly as he greets her, ensuring his performance as the oblivious neighbor remains flawless. Hinata, flustered and frantic, denies that she was seen, her cheeks flushed with the anxiety of the morning rush. Ibuki calms her with a gentle observation, noting that she seems to be fully immersed in her new reality. He wishes her a good morning, inquiring if she has grown accustomed to her commute and her duties. Hinata straightens, her expression shifting from panic to determination. She confirms that starting today, she is officially assigned to the White Sky Guardian Division, specifically the Primum Libera unit. She admits to a lingering nervousness, her confidence wavering slightly. Ibuki, maintaining his supportive persona, interrupts her self-doubt. He reminds her that her dream has manifested into reality, urging her to believe in herself. The conversation halts momentarily, a comfortable silence hanging between them before Ibuki pivots the topic to his own mundane life, mentioning the start of his part-time job. Hinata reciprocates the concern, asking if he has adjusted to his university life. She offers him a beaming smile, guaranteeing that he will succeed, infusing him with her radiant energy. Ibuki watches her leave, his internal monologue revealing the depth of his devotion. He marvels at her kindness, questioning how she can be so benevolent to a mere neighbor, concluding that she is nothing short of an angel. He observes her retreating figure, noting the hidden anxiety she carries about entering an unfamiliar environment, and his admiration deepens for her ability to mask that tension with positivity. The narration shifts to Ibuki's internal state as he processes the interaction. The sheer impact of conversing with his idol every morning hits him with the force of a 2-ton truck. He trembles, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that the girl in the uniform is the breathing incarnation of the character he idolized for 15 years. His reverie is interrupted by a sharp voice. A woman with long dark hair, Kushina, approaches him, chiding him for the delay. She observes his interaction with Hinata, her tone dry and unimpressed. They walk together through the city streets. Kushina remarks on the skepticism surrounding the current era, referencing a broadcast from the previous day regarding the centennial anniversary of the emergence of superpowers. She notes that despite a century of history, people still find the concept of a dream world, or the origins of their society difficult to fully grasp. Ibuki listens, his expression unreadable, as Kushina points out that someone like him, who avoids electronic devices, would be oblivious to the media frenzy and the special broadcasts dominating the airwaves. The duo arrives at a bus stop, where the societal hierarchy of this world becomes aggressively visible. A bus pulls up, but it is not for them. A crowd of women boards the standard vehicle, while a second, dilapidated bus arrives behind it, designated specifically for men. The segregation is stark. A commotion erupts near the doors as a man attempts to board the general bus, only to be berated by the female passengers. They mock him, questioning his lack of common sense and shaming him for his lack of bakat, the supernatural talent that defines worth in this matriarchy. Ibuki and Kushina witness the scene. The man is humiliated, told to prioritize the comfort of the female passengers and relegated to the men-only transport. Kushina boards the general bus, but Ibuki, adhering to the social rules of his gender, steps onto the crowded, gloomy male transport. Inside, the atmosphere is suffocating. Men stand packed together, heads bowed, stripped of dignity. The narration underscores the grim reality. Words like gender equality have vanished from this world. Power resides almost exclusively within women, with men viewed as incompetent and worthless beings. Ibuki endures the ride, his eyes scanning the depressed faces of his peers, acknowledging that while rare male exceptions with power exist, they are anomalies. The scene transitions to a quiet cafe. Ibuki sits across from Kushina, who has rejoined him after their separate commutes, the tension of the journey dissolving into the aroma of coffee. He thanks her for her daily efforts, the two of them settling into a booth that serves as more than just a coffee spot. Ibuki confirms that this location doubles as the headquarters for their organization, the Oath of Salvation. A waitress with two-tone hair approaches, serving them with a knowing look. The waitress, Yuka, engages in a cryptic verbal dance with them. She speaks in contradictions, her ability forcing her to lie, yet her meaning is understood by her allies. She claims they are not friends, which Ibuki translates as them being close comrades. The conversation turns to the mission at hand. Yuka hands Ibuki a document, a set of orders designed to reform this beautiful, rotten world. She announces that this will be the start, of his first mission as a member of the Oath of Salvation. Ibuki accepts the role. The plan requires a distraction. He is to act as a decoy, drawing the attention of the authorities and the Primum Libra, while the main unit operates across town. He confirms the timing, calculating that he needs to buy exactly 10 minutes for the operation to succeed. He rises, shedding the persona of the passive mob character and donning a hooded cloak, the uniform of the antagonist he has chosen to become. The scene explodes into action on the city streets. A hooded figure lands with earth-shattering force, debris flying as he carves a crater into the pavement. This is the Separator, the villain the public fears. He stands amidst the chaos, a singular male force challenging the female-dominated order. Hinata arrives on the scene, her uniform gleaming, identified as a member of the Primum Libra, the elite unit tasked with handling supernatural crimes. She confronts the hooded figure, demanding his surrender and confirming his affiliation with the Oath of Salvation. Ibuki, hidden beneath the hood, looks at her. He does not see an enemy but the heroine he has worshipped. He introduces himself with a code name, Separator, offering a polite, almost playful greeting that contrasts sharply with the destruction he just caused. Hinata is taken aback by his casual demeanor. Before she can react, Ibuki turns and flees, initiating the chase. The narration marks this moment as the true beginning of Chapter 1 of the original story, with Ibuki now inserting himself as the catalyst. Ibuki bounds across the urban landscape, his internal thoughts revealing his strategy. In the original storyline, the character Ibuki was meant to be a sacrificial lamb, a victim to motivate Hinata. He rejects that fate. He refuses to be caught or killed. He leaps from a rooftop, plummeting toward the street below. The fall is lethal, but just before impact, he activates his ability. He creates a cushion of force, a separation from the ground, landing with a heavy thud but unharmed. Hinata watches from the ledge, her eyes wide with shock. She witnesses a man using a bakat, a sight that defies the common sense of her world. She assumes he must have used a trick or a hidden route, unable to process the existence of a male power user immediately. She refuses to let him escape, diving after him. Ibuki continues his run, his movements fluid and calculated. He leads her away from the populated areas, intent on isolating her. As he runs, Ibuki's motivation crystallizes. He has decided to become the villain, the enemy of his idol, not out of malice, but out of a twisted form of devotion. By becoming her adversary, he secures the best seat in the house to witness her heroism. He wants to see her power, her acceleration, from the front row. He rationalizes that he cannot face the other fans of Wadium if he doesn't experience her glory from the closest possible distance. He stops, turning to face her in a secluded alleyway. He taunts her, apologizing for cutting the distance between them so abruptly, claiming he has no time for a Q&A session. He mocks her urgency, suggesting that her composure is cracking. Hinata, flustered and angry, yells back, refusing to forgive him for the destruction he caused. Ibuki observes her anger, finding even her rage adorable, a true testament to his otaku nature. The chase moves into the underground infrastructure, a maze of pipes and industrial tunnels. Ibuki calculates the environment. He knows Hinata's ability, acceleration, is merely a correction of speed, not a physical enhancement of durability or strength. He plans to use the narrow, obstacle-filled terrain to nullify her advantage. He weaves through the pipes, drawing her deeper into his trap. Hinata pursues him relentlessly, her speed dangerous in the confined space. Ibuki stops, cornering himself intentionally. Hinata charges, seeing an opening. She lunges, but Ibuki triggers his trap. A burst of pink smoke or substance explodes, blinding her and disrupting her momentum. She loses her footing, tumbling through the air, her control over her acceleration failing in the chaos. Gravity takes over. Hinata falls, bracing for a painful impact. But the impact never comes. Ibuki steps forward, catching her in midair. He scoops her up in a classic princess carry, his arms supporting her weight effortlessly. The momentum spins them around, and for a moment, the battle halts completely. Hinata stares up at him, her eyes swirling with confusion and shock. Ibuki holds her, his hood shadowing his face, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He realizes the absurdity of the position, the villain holding the hero. He recognizes this physical contact might be a payment or side effect of his power usage, or perhaps just the result of his interference with the plot. He whispers an apology, not for the fight, but for the intimacy of the moment, breaking the tension with a soft, unexpected, "I'm sorry." Hinata, bewildered and flushed, can only let out a confused sound, her aggression melting into sheer perplexity as the chapter concludes. A clinical deconstruction of the metaphysical laws governing this world, specifically the concept of payment for the use of bakat or supernatural talent. This transaction is absolute. A power used is a debt incurred that must be settled through a specific action or condition. Yuka, the waitress with the two-toned hair, serves as a prime example of this equivalent exchange. Her payment is the compulsion to speak falsehoods, a direct counterbalance to her bakat, which is an ability rooted in the manipulation or perception of truth and lies. A diagram visualizes this relationship, showing Y, payment/lie, and X, talent, as interconnected variables. If one is identified, the other can be deduced. Examples of her inverted speech clutter the page, such as claiming she did not watch a movie when she actually did, or describing a sweet cake as spicy. Ibuki's internal monologue bridges this theoretical exposition to his immediate, desperate reality. He calculates the cost of his own ability, separation. The logic is cold and undeniable. The more frequently he utilizes the power of separation during combat, the heavier the payment he must render. His specific price is touch, a mandatory requirement to engage in physical contact with another human being. In the aftermath of his battle with Hinata, the separator realizes he has overexerted his ability. The debt is staggering, and the universe demands immediate collection. The scene shifts to the immediate physical consequence of this debt. Ibuki, still clad in his villainous hooded disguise, clutches Hinata, the heroine of the story, with a grip that borders on desperation. Sweat beads on his face, his expression one of panicked necessity rather than romantic affection. He realizes that his payment is far from settled, compelling him to maintain this embrace against social norms and his own better judgment. Hinata, trapped in the arms of her enemy, is overwhelmed by confusion and embarrassment, her eyes wide and swirling with shock. She collapses slightly, her knees giving way under the intensity of the situation. Ibuki, realizing the optics of the situation, stammers a frantic apology, insisting that his actions are not what they seem. He tries to explain that the embrace was not born of malice or perversion, but the words fail him. Hinata's internal thoughts race, her mind grasping for a reference point for this level of intimacy. She recalls that the only male figure who has ever patted her head is her Oniai-san, the neighbor she trusts implicitly. A fleeting thought crosses her mind, wondering if perhaps her father had done so as well, but the sensation is undeniably familiar. Ibuki detects the danger in her hesitation. He realizes he must mask his identity, suppressing the Ibuki she knows and fully inhabiting the persona of the separator. He cannot allow her to connect the gentle neighbor with the hooded villain holding her. He glances at the time, noting that exactly 10 minutes have elapsed. His mission, a diversionary tactic to buy time, is complete. He abruptly releases her, stepping back into the role of the antagonist. He bids her farewell, calling her Hinata-chan, with a familiarity that lingers in the air. Ibuki decides that flight is the only option to escape the awkwardness of the moment. He retreats, leaving Hinata kneeling on the pavement, her face flushed and her fist clenched in indignation. She shouts after him, cursing the separator for his audacity. The scene transitions to Ibuki's escape through the urban labyrinth. He runs, but his mind is consumed by self-loathing. He questions his moral standing, acknowledging that while he is technically playing the role of a villain, his actions have crossed a line into something far more pathetic. He agonizes over the specifics of his transgression. It wasn't just the hug, it was the fact that he held a 15-year-old girl for 30 seconds. Even worse, during the chaos of her fall and his rescue, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of her undergarments. He labels himself a lecherous villain, the weight of his otaku conscience crushing him. He tries to rationalize it, telling himself that strictly speaking, it might have been acceptable within the bounds of a villainous role, but his conscience screams otherwise. The narration delves deeper into his psyche. The core of his torment is not just moral indecency, but sacrilege. The girl he defiled with his gaze and touch is his idol, the very reason he exists in this world. He establishes a personal code of conduct. Even as her enemy, there are lines that must never be crossed. He collapses onto a table back at his base, clutching his head in despair. He prays to his idol, begging for divine punishment to strike down his lowly existence. Yuka observes his breakdown from behind the counter, her expression unreadable. She asks how he knows about the news, her question piercing through his wall of self-pity. She congratulates him on the completion of his first mission, her tone laced with her characteristic inverted speech. She comments on his movement, noting that while he jumped from building to building, he didn't seem to play a significant role, which, in her language, means he played a very significant role. Ibuki thanks her, accepting the praise woven into her lies. The conversation turns to the source of information. Yuka deduces that Ibuki must have watched the television broadcast, but she claims she heard it on the radio. She presses him on the nature of his bakat, asking how he managed to perform such feats. Ibuki feigns ignorance, claiming he wasn't aware of any news report about him. Yuka dismisses the topic, stating she only heard about his talent in passing, though her eyes suggest she knows more than she lets on. The atmosphere in the cafe shifts as the door opens. Kushina enters, returning from her own part of the mission. Yuka greets her, noting that Kushina appears to have enjoyed herself immensely. Ibuki turns to greet his childhood friend, commending her for her hard work. He notices a change in her demeanor. The tension that usually defines her is absent, replaced by a rare relaxation. He comments on how laid-back she looks today. Kushina wastes no time. She approaches Ibuki, her intentions clear. She suggests they finish their routine quickly. Without waiting for a response, she spreads her arms wide, inviting him in. She grumbles a soft "humph," demanding he hurry up and do as usual. Ibuki freezes. He explains the mechanics of their relationship via narration. Normally, he relies on Kushina, his trusted childhood friend, to settle his payment debt of physical contact. It is a pragmatic arrangement, a medical necessity between comrades. However, Ibuki hesitates. Today, he has cast himself as a villain, an enemy of the light. He feels unworthy of accepting such a pure form of payment from a friend. He believes that a villain has no right to rely on the kindness of others to settle his debts. He stands paralyzed, sweat running down his face as he contemplates rejecting her offer. Kushina's expression darkens. She demands to know who else he intends to burden with his payment, if not her. She challenges him, asking if he has found someone else. Panic sets in. Ibuki realizes he is cornered. He stammers, agreeing to proceed, as usual, terrified of the alternative. He questions what he is doing, torn between his self-imposed villainous code and the terrifying prospect of upsetting Kushina. She stares at him, her patience wearing thin, whispering his name with a dangerous edge. Ibuki capitulates. He decides he cannot exploit the goodwill of his childhood friend, yet he steps forward, driven by the compulsion of his power and the fear of her wrath. He embraces her. The contact is immediate and overwhelming. Kushina's head rests against his chest, her presence enveloping him. He is acutely aware of every sensation, the heat of her breath against his neck, the softness of her form. The hug tightens, a squeeze that resonates through his body. Ibuki's mind goes blank. The payment takes over, shutting down his higher cognitive functions. He can only focus on the direct tactile experience of her gentleness. As they hold the embrace, Ibuki's internal narrator confesses a shameful truth. He does not hate this. He realizes that this interaction has transcended a mere transaction of payment. It is intimate, personal, and confusing. Yuka watches the scene unfolds from the sidelines, her hand covering her mouth in shock, blushing furiously at the display. Ibuki pulls away, his conscience assaulting him with a new accusation. He feels like scum, a man hiding an affair. He realizes the absurdity of his actions. He hugged his idol to survive, and now, to cover up that crime, he is hugging his childhood friend without a valid reason. He throws his hands up in defeat, declaring himself beyond saving. He has committed a double offense, embracing another girl immediately after the first. He marvels at the narrative density of the world he inhabits, noting that Wadiyum delivers plot developments with a speed and intensity that defies expectation. He feels like he is speedrunning his own moral corruption. Yuka interrupts his internal spiraling. She hums thoughtfully, piecing together the puzzle before her eyes. She labels him a villain, trash male, and part of a stupid couple, listing his new titles with amusement. Then she drops the bombshell. She deduces, with surgical precision, that Ibuki's payment is indeed touch. Ibuki turns to her, stammering, shocked that she has unraveled his secret so easily. He tries to deny it, but Yuka cuts him off. She congratulates him, sarcastically calling him amazing, while saying he is wrong, which, in her inverted speech, means he is right on the mark. Ibuki panics, realizing that if Yuka says it, it must be true. He fears that her Bakat might not just be speaking lies, but the ability to perceive the absolute truth behind any deception. He wonders if his lies are transparent to her. He frantically tries to cover his tracks, denying everything, claiming there is nothing going on. The bell rings, signaling another arrival. The cafe door swings open, and a tall, broad-shouldered man steps inside. He wears a cape similar to the one Ibuki donned, marking him as a significant figure in their organization. Yuka greets him casually, calling him Truth. The man speaks with a deep, resonant voice, mentioning that he heard a rare guest had arrived. He notes that the guest was present only for a fleeting moment. The man turns his gaze toward Ibuki. He squints, trying to place the face. He remarks that this guest is elusive, someone who avoids showing their face despite being spoken of frequently. He recalls a detail from the past. This is the man that Kushina, one of their executives, brought to the organization 2 years ago. The man identifies Ibuki as the new B. He poses a direct question, demanding to know who Ibuki really is. He reiterates that Ibuki is the man associated with Kushina, implying a history and significance that Ibuki has tried to keep low profile. The chapter concludes with this interrogation, Ibuki standing exposed before a high-ranking member of the Oath of Salvation. The atmosphere inside the establishment is thick with tension, a palpable weight that presses down on the occupants of the booth. Ibuki, the male protagonist, sits opposite a looming, aggressive figure named Guki. Ibuki's mind races, processing the realization that strikes him with the force of a physical blow. This man sitting before him is not merely a rude stranger, he is a genuine adversary. Ibuki recognizes him from the lore of Wadiyum, Volume 3. This is the man who ruthlessly crushed his idol in the original story. The recognition ignites a spark of defensive hostility within Ibuki, transforming the encounter from a casual meeting into a standoff with a fated enemy. Guki, a man with a rough, scarred exterior and an arrogant demeanor, leans forward, invading Ibuki's personal space. His hand rests heavily on his knee, his posture radiating a predatory confidence. He scoffs, his voice dripping with disdain as he addresses Ibuki. He accuses the younger man of hiding behind a woman for 2 years, labeling him a coward. Guki's eyes narrow, searching Ibuki's face for any sign of weakness. He suggests that perhaps Ibuki is actually a good person, but the tone implies that in Guki's world, being good is synonymous with being weak. He mocks the idea that someone with enough guts to face him could have spent so much time cowering in the shadow of a female protector. The confrontation escalates as Guki leans in even closer, his face inches from Ibuki's. Sweat beads on Ibuki's temple, not from fear, but from the sheer pressure of the other man's intensity. Guki demands to know who Ibuki really is. To Ibuki, the answer is internal and absolute. This man is the enemy of his idol, and therefore he is Ibuki's enemy. The logic is circular and ironclad. Guki, oblivious to Ibuki's internal narrative, continues his interrogation. He questions why a man of Ibuki's apparent potential would willingly submit to a woman's authority. He dismisses the current hierarchy, arrogantly proposing a new alignment. He demands that Ibuki become his subordinate instead. He claims indifference regarding who brings Ibuki into the fold, implying that he possesses the strength to claim anyone he desires. Ibuki's irritation flares. The repetitive, derogatory emphasis Guki places on the word woman grates on his nerves. He analyzes the man's speech pattern, noting the disdainful inflection every time the gender is mentioned. Ibuki's internal resolve hardens. He decides to reject this offer immediately. He perceives Guki's vision of a strongest team, comprised exclusively of men, as archaic and unappealing. In his mind, he retorts that he has no need for the kind of strength Guki offers, a strength built on exclusion and arrogance. He mentally commands the man to leave, his patience fraying. The tension shifts focus to the third person at the table. Yuka sits silently, her presence serene amidst the masculine posturing. She sips her drink, her eyes closed, seemingly detached from the argument. Guki, sensing the dismissal, demands to know what Ibuki is muttering. The air in the booth grows colder. Yuka's eyes snap open, and she utters a single command, silence. The word cuts through Guki's bluster like a blade. The dynamic at the table undergoes an instant transformation. Yuka, the woman Guki so casually dismissed, exerts her authority. She states that dealing with him is troublesome, and for that reason alone, she will let his insolence slide this one time. Her gaze is flat, unimpressed, boring into Guki with a terrifying calmness. Guki, realizing he has overstepped a boundary he cannot cross, clicks his tongue in annoyance. He scratches the back of his head, feigning indifference to mask his retreat. He stands, his heavy coat swirling around him, and declares that it is too early to settle things. As Guki walks toward the exit, the cafe's other patrons seem to fade into the background. He pauses at the door, glancing back with a promise of future conflict. He vows to return, specifically addressing the newbie, marking Ibuki as a target for a later date. The door swings shut behind him, leaving silence in his wake. With the antagonist gone, the atmosphere relaxes slightly, though the undercurrent of danger remains. Ibuki turns to Yuka, a teasing glint entering his eyes. He brings up her code name, asking if Setsuna essentially means truth. Yuka flusters, denying the implication with a flushed face, her cool composure cracking under Ibuki's playful scrutiny. She tries to deflect, stating that just because they belong to the same organization does not mean they are all allies. This statement serves as a grim reminder of their reality. The narrative expands to explain the structure of their organization, the Salvation Group. The group's symbol, a stylized rose, represents their complex ideology. The organization formed in response to the Bakati, a supernatural calamity that created severe social disparities. Many flocked to the group seeking refuge and change, but the rapid growth compromised its security and cohesion. It is a fractured entity. The group's sworn motto is to save the weak, a noble goal that is often overshadowed by the dissatisfaction of its members. Many, like Guki, are unhappy with the status quo and seek to impose their will through force. Among these dissenters, Guki is identified as the most troublesome, a radical element within their own ranks. Ibuki looks at Yuka, shifting the conversation to a more personal level. He asks if she, as Kushina, her real identity, will protect him. The question hangs in the air, laden with expectation. Yuka's face erupts in a bright red blush. She stammers, initially agreeing, then retracting it as a lie, then insisting it is true. Her tsundere nature is on full display as she struggles to articulate her feelings without losing face. Finally, she settles on a stern warning. She tells him to be careful when she is not around, her concern genuine despite her awkward delivery. The conversation turns to business. Yuka drops a bombshell. Their next mission is scheduled for tomorrow. Ibuki is taken aback by the suddenness of it. He exclaims that tomorrow is far too soon. Yuka ignores his protest, explaining the details. The operation involves attacking a transport vehicle. Their objective is to liberate a captured leader of their organization who is being moved to a new location. Ibuki processes this information. The image of a woman in shackles, sitting in a desolate cell and longing for a cigarette, flashes through his mind, the leader they are meant to rescue. He realizes the gravity of the situation. The organization's leadership is compromised, and they are launching a desperate bid to recover one of their own. He sighs, resigning himself to the tight schedule. He comments that the captured leader sounds like a fool for getting caught, but he accepts the mission parameters. The scene transitions to the following day. The city skyline looms under a bright sky, the urban landscape oblivious to the violence about to unfold. Ibuki and Yuka stand atop a vantage point, overlooking the street below. They are dressed in heavy, hooded coats that obscure their features. The coats are not merely for disguise. Ibuki touches the fabric, marveling at its properties. Yuka confirms that the robes possess an identity-blurring effect. As long as the hood is up, their faces will be unrecognizable to observers, a magical obfuscation that ensures their anonymity. Ibuki pulls the hood lower, a sinister grin spreading across his face in the shadows. Yuka notices his expression and recoils slightly, disturbed by his evident enjoyment of the situation. Ibuki ignores her reaction. His mind is racing with the implications of his current status. By wearing this robe and participating in this mission, he has successfully deviated from the original story. In the canon timeline, he would have been captured and his identity revealed after his first duel with Hinata. But here, he managed to escape. He has avoided the bad end. He clenches his fist, feeling the power of agency. He is no longer a pawn of the narrative, he is an active player changing the script. He realizes that with this disguise, he can continue his activities without fear of exposure. He can support Hinata, his idol, from the shadows. But his ambition grows. He realizes that by positioning himself as a nameless subordinate of Setsuna, he gains a unique vantage point. He can observe not just Hinata, but all the other heroines who appear in the Wadayum story. He envisions himself on the front lines, a spectator with a VIP seat to the unfolding drama of his favorite world. The realization fills him with a fanboy's delight, contrasting sharply with the deadly serious nature of the mission. He apologizes to Yuka for spacing out, masking his internal excitement. He reaffirms his role. He is merely a helper, a subordinate to the executive Setsuna. This role-playing aspect appeals to him. It allows him to be part of the world without being crushed by its main plot gears. Yuka checks the time. She signals that the operation is about to commence. Below them, on the street, the target approaches. A convoy of vehicles moves through the city, flanked by guards. The plan they discussed is set in motion. Ibuki gazes down, his eyes locking onto the transport. The waiting is over. The operation begins. The narrative focus snaps to the street level as the ambush triggers. The calm of the city is shattered. The objective is clear: attack the transport, neutralize the guards, and free the prisoner. Ibuki and Yuka leap into action, their coats billowing behind them like wings of shadow. The raid on the escort vehicle is underway. Perched high above the urban sprawl, the wind whips against the heavy fabric of their cloaks as Ibuki and Yuka prepare for the commencement of their mission. Ibuki, his face obscured by the deep hood of his disguise, grumbles about the weight of the equipment he is carrying, noting that the burden feels disproportionately heavy for him. He surveys the tactical landscape below, observing that the convoy's route takes them through an area with significant elevation differences. He calculates that while this verticality places a strain on him, it provides a distinct tactical advantage for Yuka. He verbalizes his strategy, noting that once they descend, Kushina will be the one to resolve the conflict. He warns that the enemy guards likely possess Bakati, abilities that are superior in high-elevation combat, necessitating a surprise attack from the air. Ibuki narrows his eyes, focusing his internal energy as he activates his own ability. He whispers the command, separation, and his eye gleams with a supernatural light, the iris contracting as the power of his Bakati manifests. The atmosphere shifts around them, the air growing heavy with the anticipation of violence. He confirms the status of the operation, signaling that the separation is complete and the stage is set. A flashback flickers through Ibuki's mind, recalling the planning phase where he had assumed he would be managing the entire operation. In that memory, Yuka had corrected him with a gentle but firm apology, stating that she would handle Primum Libra herself. She had relegated Ibuki to the role of backup, a position he now occupies as they stand on the precipice of battle. The recollection fades as the reality of the ambush takes over. Below them, the tranquility of the street is shattered. The target vehicle comes into view, and the ambush begins. The alarm is raised immediately among the convoy's defenders, their voices cutting through the air as they identify the attack coming from the Salvation Oath group. They spot two assailants descending upon them. Panic tinges the guards' voices as they recognize the signature motif of the lead attacker, the red spider lily, or Higanbana. They identify the threat as the executive known as Setsuna. Yuka, embodying the persona of Setsuna, lands with devastating grace atop the lead police cruiser. Her sudden arrival throws the convoy into chaos. One guard, wielding a spear, screams out that it is a teleportation Bakati, realizing the nature of her movement too late. Another guard, commanding the unit, shouts for everyone to remain vigilant, demanding to know when the infiltrator arrived. The confusion is palpable. They had only registered one enemy initially, and now death stands on the roof of their vehicle. The guards attempt to rally, analyzing the tactical situation with desperate speed. One observer notes that the range of her teleportation is limited, not covering vast distances. Emboldened by this analysis, they formulate a counter-strategy, believing that if they surround her with 3 operatives, they can overwhelm her defenses. They initiate a coordinated strike, 3 defenders lunging towards Yuka from different angles. The street erupts into a melee. Yuka moves like a phantom, her cloak swirling around her as she evades the clumsy strikes of the guards. She leaps high into the air, defying gravity, while Ibuki watches from a distance, observing the flawless execution of her combat style. The guards press their attack, shouting commands to strike, but they are hitting nothing but air. Yuka's movements are precise, her expression hidden beneath her hood but radiating a cold, lethal focus. As she descends from her aerial dodge, Yuka throws a small, wrapped object toward the hood of a police car. The guards, anticipating her movement, believe they have cornered her. A female guard with a spear lunges forward, convinced that even a strong teleportation ability can be penetrated if the user is pinned down. She deduces that Yuka places her teleportation destination at the point of her evasion, predicting where the executive will reappear. The spear thrusts forward, the guard shouting that she has landed a hit. However, the attack strikes only the empty fabric of a decoy. Ibuki, narrating the scene internally, revels in the prowess of his companion. He notes that Kushina's strength is not derived solely from her bakati. The guard gasps in shock as Yuka materializes not where the spear struck, but directly behind her, a blade held in a reverse grip, poised to strike. Ibuki swells with pride, identifying this lethal warrior as his childhood friend, the one he boasts of. He describes her as a disruptor of societal balance, a being whose physical martial arts technique is robust enough to dominate even without the aid of supernatural abilities. Yuka sweeps through the defenders, her movements a blur of kinetic energy. She incapacitates the guards with fluid, brutal efficiency, leaving bodies scattered across the asphalt. The narrative text reinforces her status, labeling her the second-rank executive Setsuna of the Salvation Oath. She stands amidst the wreckage, a solitary figure of immense power. The remaining guards, pulling back to reassess, realize the hopelessness of engaging her in close quarters. They acknowledge that no one among them can match Kushina in a duel. They catalog their available assets: a spear user, a body enhancement user, and an ice weapon user. They conclude that their only chance of survival lies in engaging her from a super long distance, keeping her devastating melee range at bay. Ibuki, watching from his vantage point, notices a discrepancy in the enemy's behavior. Instead of retreating or maintaining distance, a new combatant enters the fray, charging in for close-range combat. Ibuki finds this strange, reasoning that the enemy must be aware of Setsuna's strength and the disadvantage of such a tactic. He deduces that this suicidal charge is a diversion, intended to draw attention away from a larger threat. His instincts scream a warning, and he shouts to Yuka to advance and then immediately to dodge. The warning comes just in time. A massive blade of energy crashes down from the sky, shattering the pavement where Yuka stood moments before. The impact sends debris flying and creates a physical barrier between Ibuki and Yuka. Ibuki stares at the destruction, his breath catching in his throat. Yuka calls out, thanking him for the warning, acknowledging that his shout saved her from the ambush. From the dust of the impact, a voice floats down, apologizing for missing the target. Ibuki looks up to see a figure descending from the sky, describing the arrival as that of an angel. The figure is a young woman with long blue hair, wearing a uniform accented with blue stripes. Most strikingly, she is flanked by 4 floating long swords that resemble wings of steel. Ibuki instantly recognizes this new adversary. He identifies her as Atsuji Rui. In his internal monologue, he categorizes her as the partner of the protagonist Hinata from the story Wadium. Rui touches down gracefully, her demeanor calm and polite despite the violence of her entrance. She thanks them for the encounter, acknowledging their previous interaction where she had chased them just the day before. She addresses them as Setsuna and her cohort, declaring that this time, the outcome will not be the same as their previous escape. She vows to capture them. Ibuki's reaction is entirely at odds with the gravity of the threat. Internally, he is screaming with the delight of a hardcore fan. He admires the maestro, the beautiful conductor of the battlefield, thrilled to see the real thing in the flesh. He geeks out over her cool movements, feeling that her presence strikes directly at the heart of his otaku sensibilities. To him, her menacing threats are merely fan service, a treat designed specifically for his enjoyment. He analyzes her character archetype, noting that she possesses a kaderi side, cool and aloof, yet deeply protective. He recalls her lore, noting that while her personality is generally cold, she warms up to Hinata. He notes that Atsuji Rue is the same age as the genius Hinata and is affiliated with Primum Libra. He reaffirms that she is his idol, and he is the type of fan who buys her merchandise in bulk. He observes the current dynamic, realizing that at this point in the timeline, Rue and Hinata have not yet exchanged many words, meaning her dear side is yet to fully blossom. The battlefield shifts as Yuka moves away, seemingly drawing the other guards or pursuing an objective, leaving Ibuki alone with Rue. Rue clears her throat, refocusing her attention. She tells Setsuna to leave this to her, confident in her ability to handle the situation. Rue turns her gaze toward Ibuki. A dark, unsettling transformation comes over her. She chuckles, a low, menacing sound that repeats, hee 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 hee. She addresses him directly, mocking the idea that the separation was their success. She reveals that she is the one who intended to separate them. Her eyes, shadowed and terrifying, lock onto Ibuki. She identifies him with disdain as a man. She connects the dots, realizing that if he is with the Higanbana user, he must be the separator, the sole male subordinate of the executive Setsuna. The fan service evaporates as Rue's expression twists into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She utters a single, final verdict, die. Ibuki is struck dumb by the sudden escalation. He stammers, confused by the sheer intensity of her bloodlust. He wonders internally why her intent to kill is so overwhelmingly high, unable to reconcile the cool heroine he idolizes with the murderous force of nature standing before him.